What's responsible for Gavin Newsome having a $12 billion deficit is the following. The highest income tax in the United States at 13.3 of any state. I think it's the sixth highest sales tax, the highest gasoline tax, the highest priced gasoline, the highest priced electricity, half the nation's homeless, nearly half the nation's illegal immigrants, 200 to 300,000 of the professional class and upper middle class leaving per year, schools that are rated in the bottom 10 of the 50 states, a poverty rate about 21%, almost like Appalachia. That is the problem. And what caused that problem? You have from La Jolla to Berkeley, about a 50-mile radius of the ocean, some of the wealthiest people in the world. And you can calibrate that by real estate or zip codes or anything. And they have created what they feel is heaven on earth, a utopia. And they're not subject to the consequences of their own ideology. So what does that mean? We shut down a nuclear power plant. We shut down some oil plants. We put all these solar farms in. We have an excess of solar energy in the daytime, and then we pay expensive imported energy at night. We thought we were going to store it at Moss Landing. We had 2 catastrophic fires, cost over $1 billion. We've thrown down a rat hole, $30 billion for high-speed rail, not 1 foot of track laid. It's the most mismanaged and incompetently managed state in the union. It's not all Gavin's fault. He inherited that from Jerry Brown. And all of these people, when they destroy the state, they all go off to a pleasant. Dianne Feinstein had a big, beautiful home on the shores of Lake Tahoe. Barbara Boxer went down to Rancho Mirage and had a beautiful place. Kamala Harris lives in Brentwood. Gavin Newsome just bought a big, beautiful home in the Bay Area. Jerry Brown is on his Grass Valley off-the-grid estate. So that's what they do. Nancy Pelosi can't decide whether she'll go to her mansion in San Francisco or her palazzo in Napa Valley. But they are the people who did this. They did not care about the average Californian, whether their schools were safe and competitive. They didn't care whether they could afford gas. They didn't care whether they could afford timber and lumber. They shut down the timber industry. They're shutting down the refinery industry. They didn't care that 1/4 of the population is not or will not pay their power bill. That's it. He will not touch any of those issues, not one. So he'll just blame Donald Trump. And he'll kind of say, we can't afford to give any more free health care to illegal aliens. That was his idea. And he will tinker around and he'll do his little jazz with his hands and his slick hair. And he'll say that he's going to the middle and he's preparing for 2000. But he won't ever undo the damage that he and Jerry Brown and other leftists have done. Because to do that, they would rather be ideologically orthodox and have everybody poor than to be unorthodox and have everybody well off. It's entirely absurd. I mean, we're speaking in the middle of May and the stock market is right exactly where he was shortly before he took office, January 10th or 12th. It's right where it was during the campaign. It went up a little bit on news that he had won in November, and then it settled down. So it's regained all of the losses that we were told by the Wall Street Journal and others were going to be signifiers of a recession. You look at energy prices, they're near historic lows. You look at inflation, it was 2.3. You look at GDP, they're going to readjust the GDP higher. You look at corporate profits, they're up. You look at investment, Trump announced this week, and I think it's been ratified too, that he's got $10 trillion in commitments for foreign investment into the United States. So all of that hasn't even been digested. So the economy is not responsible for Gavin Newsome. We have 52 seats in Congress. I think we only have 11 Republicans. We have a state Senate and a state assembly. They have super majorities. So the Republicans there is no statewide Republican office holder. No state controller, no attorney general, no lieutenant governor, no governor. And so, and all of the court system, the appointees have been there now for what will be 16 years. So the Schwarzenegger appointments are there well early, they're all retiring. And so they have the judiciary, they have the legislative, and they have the executive branch. And the only thing that's going to change are two things. One, whether the Silicon Valley grandees who have $9 trillion in market capitalization, and these are people like formerly of California, Elon Musk, David Sachs, Ben Horowitz, Andreessen, Larry Ellison, whether they divorce themselves entirely from the left-wing project. They're starting to. And they just say, you know what, we're either going to move out of this state or we're not going to subsidize all this stuff. You make it impossible to do business and you're hurting the middle class. And then whether the Hispanic community, which, as we've talked about, just polled 62% in favor of Donald Trump's 100 days, get it and say, all of these Latino elites that go to universities, they're no different than these out-of-touch so-called white elites, and they're two peas in a pod, and all they care about is climate change, transgenderism, the New Green Deal, DEI, ESG, but they do not care about us. They do not care to get timber here. The rare earth materials, natural gas, gasoline, all of these rich things we could do. They'd like to blow up dams on the Klamath River rather than use the money allotted for dams to build 4 or 5 more so we have water. There's some signs. So if those two groups said we've had it with the progressive agenda, we could change, but so far they haven't. His theory is like this. For him to be coherent, and he's never been coherent, and by the way, he's a billionaire. Ben & Jerry's sold out, I think, to Lever Brothers, or what is that Lever Brothers concern. So they took their huge amounts of cash, and then they got even more huge amounts as consultants, and then they endow left-wing causes. So this group came in and dispersed in the gallery. It was kind of a conspiracy. He was one of them. And then at opportune times, they each popped up like little toys, jack-in-the-boxes. And then they were really, the security is very different under this Republican Congress. They get them out very quickly. So then he watched everybody pop up and scream, and he thought that the security people were occupied. And he started in on his rant. And his rant was, as always with him, and most of the hard left, was completely incoherent, because he said they were cutting aid to kids on Medi-Cal. That was Gavin Newsome who said we can no longer give free health care because we can't afford it to illegal aliens. And half of all births in California are on Medi-Cal, and 40% as it is on Medi-Cal. We have, in the last 40 years, had about 20 million illegal aliens. Half of them are in California, and we can't afford it. So basically his argument is, well, if you're anywhere in the world, if you're in China and you're poor, and you're in Africa and you're poor, and if you're in Mexico and you're poor and you come across the border, we owe you health care. Well, we don't have any. I don't care. We owe you health care. Why doesn't he set up a clinic? He's got $1 billion. If he's worried, would he lose $100 million? No, he didn't. He wouldn't even care. Why doesn't he just go to Fresno and say, this is the Ben & Jerry's health clinic? And he can spend, I don't know, $20 million on the building. He can put $80 billion in endowment. He can get, I don't know, 10%. Maybe he can get $5 or $6 million and run it as a free health clinic. He won't do that. He'll go around and go, I got a new ice cream, Jerry Brown, Jerry Garcia, cookie crumble, lime peppermint twist. Who cares? You're completely incoherent and irrelevant. And I wish they had arrested him. I mean, and then the other half of his argument was killing children, we. And that's because our ally Israel supply weapons to. But he didn't say one word what caused this round of violence. It's called October 7th, 2023. It was at peace. Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor for Joe Biden, he didn't know why it was true. He just bragged in an NBC Meet the Press. He said, Middle East, my portfolio in the Middle East is the quietest in 2 decades. He didn't credit Donald Trump at all. The left doesn't know quite what to do with all this. They really don't. They haven't got a strategy, because on the one hand, he's got tariffs that they used to be for. On the other hand, most of the unionized American non-governmental employees voted for him. On the other hand, the idea of taking tips off the tax rolls, or taking Social Security, exempt it from taxes, that was something the Democrats always talked about. And then being a peacemaker abroad and trashing neoconservatives, which he did. He just said nation building, nation. He was talking about the Afghan and the Iraq war, maybe even the first Gulf, I don't know. But so how do you criticize him if you're a Democrat? I don't know. You say he's a racist or he's a fascist, but he stole the middle class from them, and they are now the party of the very poor and the very wealthy, and he's a party of the middle class, and that's a bad thing if you're a Democrat, because the middle class is where elections are won. They're all calling Trump a liar when he said, oh, they're taking their land away. They are. But he said, no, they have a new law. Yes, they don't have to give compensation, but they won't take it unless it's for public purpose. In South Africa, anything can be for public purposes, anytime, anywhere, to anybody. So that's bogus. So they're stealing land, and there's only 7% of the population is white. It's shrinking. What he's worried about, Ramaphosa, is that his name? What he's worried about is he's looked at what Mugabe did in Rhodesia and Zimbabwe, and he understands, he hates white people, he hates Afrikaners especially, but he understands that they make their expertise in agriculture and agribusiness make South Africa the wealthiest of all countries south of the Mediterranean, and everybody knows it, and he's going to drive out that group of people. Why? Let's look at the border. Joe Biden over 4 years destroyed it. He defanged Border Patrol and ICE. He stopped the congressionally approved wall. The result was 12 million people came in. They entered illegally, they resided illegally, and we have 500,000 of them suspected of criminal backgrounds, and almost every day there is a murder or rape. But here's the question. Everybody knows he did it, but nobody asks, why did he do it? Why did you do the most nihilistic thing in the history of the modern presidency? I think we're going to live with this problem for 50 years. But why did he do it? Why did he say you can come in without a COVID vaccination, but we're going to get rid of 8,500 of our U.S. citizens in the military who don't want to be vaccinated? Why did he say that you need a real ID, but you don't if you're in Italy? Why? Was it that he wanted new constituents because the agenda didn't appeal to 51% of the population? Did he think that under early and mail-in voting protocols inaugurated in 2020 that he was going to be able to have these people vote very quickly? Did he want to grow government and then have a bigger entitlement, higher taxes? Did he not believe in borders? Was he a globalist? It was so nihilistic, it was so destructive that we need to know why. Just tell us why you did it. Was it just because you hated half the country and you wanted to destroy it? You hated MAGA, garbage, semi-fascists? Is that it? The same existential is why do all these reporters say now, we were in on the deal, we covered up for Biden, the Biden staff did it, no, the media did it, but they all agree that he was non compos mentis, he was cognitively challenged when he was nominated, when they cleared the nomination field out. They got rid of Buttigieg, they got rid of Elizabeth Warren, they got rid of Sanders, they all disappeared quickly. And then they used this waxen effigy as a veneer. But why? That was very risky to do that. They all tell us they did it, but they don't tell us why. Was the idea that good old Joe Biden from Scranton had some conservative remnant vestigial aura about him, and then they could use him and they could tell Joe, you get to be president, but we're going to run it? Or was it was even worse than that? They thought, this is what we've always been waiting for. This is what Barack Obama said when he wanted a third term and he could phone in a left-wing agenda from his basement without appearing in public. In other words, it wasn't that they were stuck. They saw this as a wonderful opportunity. Use Joe Biden and just have him come in 3 days a week, stumble through stuff, and then push through the most left-wing, nihilistic, destructive, socialist agenda in history. It really was. If you look at the border and crime and Afghanistan and 2 theater wars and the hyperinflation and the $7 trillion that he borrowed, Was that the reason why? Or were they just incompetent? They just didn't know. They were just, oh, I don't know, who are we going to nominate? Oh, Joe. They didn't think he was that bad. But please don't tell us that you covered it up and think that's a confession sufficient for the American. Tell us why you did it. They never tell us why. So we had all these polls. They were wrong in 2016. They were wrong in 2020. They lost credibility. And then in 2024, they did it again. As I said earlier, the NPR PBS poll of Kamala Harris had her winning 4 points on the night of the election. She lost by 1.5 points. They were 5.5 points off. David Pfaff, one of the insiders of the Harris campaign, said he was kind of amazed that all the polls had her ahead when they're internal polls that have to be accurate because you work from them in your campaign strategy and you pay for it. Not one had her ahead. So why would they risk their reputation and lie again in 2024 and be discredited again and give Rasmussen and Insider Advantage and Trafalgar more and more credibility as the accurate poll? I don't have that answer. Was it because they wanted to gin up momentum? They knew she was going to lose. They thought if they lied, if the Des Moines Register said she was really winning when she lost by 12 points, they'd get more funding. People would say, gee whiz, Trump's going to lose. I don't want to vote. Was that the idea? What was it? Why do they continue to lie? They have to tell us why. It's not enough just to say politics, we want power. What was the strategy to make you do something so egregious to destroy the border and cause so much misery, so egregious to foist somebody who was not in control of his own cognitive powers as president with nuclear codes, so destructive to try to influence a campaign by repeatedly lying that the losing candidate who was losing the whole time was going to win. We just want to know why. The left has a very strange idea. The only people really coming in to the United States are Asians and Hispanics and people from Africa, period. There are no people from the former British Commonwealth or from the EU, basically. So when you have a few people coming in that don't fit, then they go hysterical and say this is terrible, which begs the question, why do they want only people coming that are very poor and non-white, and why do they go hysterical when a measly 60 or 70 people are coming in who are real refugees? They have a vision of the United States of being a socialist, non-white, and when you say that, they say you're just a racist yourself, you believe in the great replacement theory. That's the term they accuse conservatives of conspiracies, but they're the ones that brag about demography as destiny and the new Democratic majority. So they hate South African refugees coming because they were afraid that there'll be too many white people coming. So all of this elite that the Democratic Party thinks that they have to promote, the new AOC, the new Jasmine Crockett, their own constituencies don't. They don't have enough of their own constituencies. Given that they've driven out the white working class, they have to win 90% of blacks, 65% of, and they're not doing it. And I think it's gotten worse. Donald Trump's the only president to have been impeached twice. He's the only president to have been tried as a private citizen. He's the only ex-president that had his home raided. He's the only ex-president to be the subject of state, local, and federal prosecutions and indictments. He's the only major presidential candidate that there were ever in 25 states to take him off the ballot. And so we've kind of forgotten all that. It's been, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months ago during the campaign. And now he wants to revive that and just show you how crazy it is. And then the question is, did we ever hear of this man before this? I never had. I had never heard of Jasmine Crockett until about 6 weeks ago when she started screaming about white people. I didn't even know I still don't know who he is, the mayor of Newark, and he wants to be governor. So what is this all about? It's street theater. It's about getting name recognition and taking over from the old guard of the Democratic Party, and they're going to go full McGovern and full Dukakis. I hope they do, and they're going to run that party in the ground because nobody's going to vote for this agenda. What Trump is doing also, it's really important to point out, he's doing two things. He's saying that things that can't go on won't go on. You can't print $37 trillion and rack up that much debt. You can't print you can't give to our competitors $1.2 trillion in trade surpluses every year, and you cannot run up a budget deficit of $2 trillion after you've borrowed $7 trillion. And you can't just keep fueling the Chinese military with trade surpluses and foreign exchange. And you can't just keep letting in 10,000 people a year. So everybody knows that. But the second existential question is, why did they do all that? And how did they pull it off? Because their positions on open border, not very popular. Afghanistan, not very popular. Soros crime policy, not very popular. Hyper economy, not very popular. So how does the left exercise power? And Trump has come up with a solution. He says the progressive project does not rely on popular support. All of the issues do not poll 50%. So what do? Oh, they rely on the bureaucracies, the lowest learners, the Anthony Fauci's, the James Comey's, right? So he's going after that by cutting them. And then he says, oh, they're the big mega foundations, Tides Foundation, Gates, so we're going to start taxing their income. Their endowments. I think that he should have an exemption up to 10 billion, because if you look at the mega foundations, 100 billion and plus, they're all left wing. But our little Bradley Foundation is 1 billion. But they need to exempt some of the smaller ones. And then he's saying, where else did they get their power? Oh, they train all of our future leaders in the university, and they rely on federal money. And Mr. Garber, the president of Harvard, I think he's saying to the Trump administration, do we use race? Don't ask that question, because we have racially segregated graduation ceremonies, dorms, and our admissions are race weighted. Do we report all the gifts from China? No, we don't want to go there, and we haven't reported all that money. Do we gouge the federal government 50 to 60% in surcharges? Yeah, we don't want to go there. We do. Do we protect speakers who come on campus as invited guests with First Amendment? No, we don't want to talk about that. So he's going after the universities, and he's on the right side of that. So foundations, university, media, fake news. He's always attacking the media. Caroline Levitt has got the new media in there and kicked some of the old ones out. And she's a little bulldog, big bulldog. I don't mean physically, but her stature, her ability to take them on is pretty amazing. So what I'm getting at is part of the Trump counter-revolution is actually having these issues and policies and agenda. The other half is saying, how did we get these terrible things on the border and overseas? Oh, I know what it was. The foundations fund DEI. Oh, the higher education lobby indoctrinates people. Oh, the media warps the news. Oh, pollsters do this. Oh, and he's going after every one of these institutions at the root causes. And that's why they're getting so angry. It's a real counter-revolution.